Welcome to Positively Caffeinated. I'm Camden,
I'm Teece.
and today we're talking about espresso and roasting.
Yeah, really just more about the roasting process. If you haven't seen well, you're watching it, you can see it right now, but if you haven't seen what coffee is all about, we're going to try to kind of walk you through the journey of how the coffee comes from. Well, let me ask you a question. So,
Yeah.
do you know if coffee is considered a vegetable or a fruit?
I do not know.
What's your assumption do you think would be a fruit or a vegetable?
I'm guessing it would be a vegetable.
Oh, no, wrong.
Oh,
So it's considered a fruit. And you know why it's considered fruit? So if you didn't know, before we get this, these are called seeds.
so is this not?
This
Because in
is
my head, this is the actual.
no,
Oh,
it's a bush or a tree, depending on what part of the world you get it from. And in that, or on the tree or bush, is something that's like a cherry.
Oh.
And I'm not going to dive into all the different layers of the cherry, but once you peel back the cherry and all its skins and all that, you will get this, which is basically a green bean. If you want to get up closer there, you can sort of see there's green beans. That's what you get in bags from all over the world. So that's how they're shipped. So you get these beans in. These have been in here for a while.
if
So
you want to actually pour these out or something, I can also do footage.
yeah,
Like do a close up of all of them laid out if you want,
okay, we can do
or
that. Yeah,
it's up to you. Or I can just do a close up of all these.
sure.
Okay.
And cut. Okay. So these are the green beans that you would get from, and these come in traditionally from port to port in about 75 to 100 pounds or more from the supplier. So they come into all the different ports, and then they're exported out of those ports to different coffee places. And then some coffee places will break them up into different. You can get from some of the, more of the local roasters or more of the green bean buyers that supply smaller roasteries. You can get in, 80 pounds, 50 pounds, 40 pounds.
Question for you
Yeah.
is, well, two things. One, so they're from a cherry.
Yeah.
They're extracted from the cherry, so they're obviously some kind of seed,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Like cherry seed, coffee cherry seed.
Yeah.
Are they dried? Like, do they come?
There's
Or are
different
they
ways.
laid
There's
out and
water,
dried?
there's a water method, there's a dry method. So like in Africa, usually dry methods, they pick the cherries off, they put them on big concrete slabs, they let them dry out, they swash them back and forth, they go through a watering process like in Central America.
What is you said
And
there's dry and there's the water method?
there's a natural method, which dries on the tree, there's the water method, which are basically tumbling through water channels and basically taking off the cherry from the seed.
Oh, so they just throw the cherries into like a conveyor belt or like a...
Yeah, like a stream, basically. Like if you go through, like it's like a water park slide kind of thing.
Oh.
And then they tumble through and they, depulp them. And so we could probably do a whole show just on that. But at the end of the day, there's green beans. They vary in size, they vary in color a little bit. They're not all perfectly green or anything like that. So then I get them, different countries, different, and I start to roast them. So get the green beans, weigh them out. Then they go in the roaster, and then they start to yellow. And so that's kind of the yellow, and that's kind of the first evolution of the process from green. And what I'm focused on is what kind of roast am I trying to get. So you wouldn't want to taste this and then pull them out like this. So you want to evolve, right?
So this is very slightly roasted.
Yeah. Yes.
So would this be...
It's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
No, that's
Go ahead.
exactly what I want to talk about. So 2 minutes in the roaster produces this. And I believe This is the kind of like the Nordic.
No,
No, even
Nordic would
lighter than
be
this.
no Nordic would be down here,
Oh,
right
okay,
after
so it's
this.
still a little bit longer.
Yes.
Oh,
So this is about 2 to 3 minutes, and the reason I'm saying it varies because it depends on how I start the roaster at, what's the temperature of that. Every roaster is a little bit different. So if I say 2.5 minutes, someone who's a roaster may say, no, that's 4 minutes. So it really varies on the roaster and who's roasting it. But at
hmm.
the end of the day, the colors that we're showing you are on all roasts. Just the timing may be a little off. So, but you were talking like the Nordic roast. So this is another minute and a half, 2 minutes, depending on that. So we're about 4 some minutes. This is right before the first pop. So this is where you're talking. Nordic roasts typically are at the first pop or right before the first pop.
What is the first pop for those that don't
First pop
understand?
is basically where the heat temperature within the bean is getting, and I always compare it to, and most, if you read books or anything about roasting, it's kind of like a popcorn. So you got
Hmm.
the seed of a popcorn or corn gets in the, I know you love popcorn, so
I do love popcorn.
you're shifting around. You're the roaster. You're right. You're
Yeah,
roasting.
yeah.
You're shifting around, moving around, getting the heat in there, and all of a sudden you hear it go, boop, and that's where
Hmm.
the outer skin of the corn, same for the bean, pops open.
Gotcha.
So that's where kind of the skin pops open. I'm trying to keep it simple so we're not getting too much again in the weeds. That's the intent, and from there there's a philosophy and ideas, kind of the Nordic you know, idea was that's kind of like that burst is when all the flavors. Now,
That first pop, they're
yeah,
like,
there's
all
other
right, we're
coffee
done.
companies, other. I believe that is a good characteristic of a coffee.
Hmm.
I like to go a little bit after the first roast if I'm making a light roasted coffee, and then it's kind of evolved. And then you have and then there's the lightest roast. So I usually probably wouldn't go right here. I go right here, and then it's kind of evolution. And then you got the second pop. We kind of describe a lot of roasters like it's going to the pinnacle of a cliff, and just before you jump off that cliff, you pull it back,
Mm.
and that's where you get the dark roasted coffee, and
And
that
can
can
you?
be French roast or Italian roast. It has a lot of oils on it,
Hmm.
and I find that there, for those that like dark roast coffee, you're getting all those oils and outside of the skin, and that if you open a bag of dark roast coffee, you see all that on the bean. That has a lot of oils and characteristics in it too. So really, but some people feel like if you go that far, you almost burnt
That's
the
what I was gonna
flavor.
ask. Can you burn
That's
coffee?
you can,
Oh.
yeah. And in your soap that you make, fat bean soap, you're using actually coffee beans that I picked out of the coffees that weren't, you know, right for the coffee that I was serving. Because there's always a little bit, maybe one five
I didn't
percent.
realize that the I guess that would make sense is that there are some that would be burnt in the process.
Yeah, I mean, and some of us get burnt because no, you're talking hundreds of
And is
beans.
that what a bad bean is?
Yeah,
Like
so
bad
there's
or
defective beans where the beans get burned on the tips. There's a whole bean burn. There's chips in it. If you ever
hmm.
go to like a coffee roasting competition, you'll see them take all the green beans that they're given for the competition and pick out anything they think is defective automatically. So they pull those out, and then they roast the coffee, and they do the same thing again. So it's fascinating to see. I've never done any competitions like that, but I've been involved in and judged some. So it's kind of really intense, but it's really purposeful because they're looking for the best, kind of the best beans, just like anything, the best beans to make the best cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Because then they, once they do the competition, then they roast the coffee and then they cup the coffee and all those things. So I don't, I think cupping varies from roast to roast, but I really look at is, am I giving the customer the best quality coffee from my local roast, artisan roastery? Because I only roasted 3 to 6 pounds.
Yeah, so what do you prefer of these? So we have
I like this style for light roasted coffee,
okay.
and probably right here. I don't do probably this is the darkest I usually would go. I really don't get to this because this is for me. My preference is probably personally, if I was roasting my coffee every day, I'd roast it right to here. But that's just because my personal preference. But I would say also there's great cups, and again, there's a lot of different coffees and a lot of different variations of coffees from all over the world, and there's certain characteristics of those coffees that I prefer when I'm buying it from from the farm I'm buying it from, and I know about that farm and what we discussed about their beans and kind of, that they're looking for, or when they're harvesting them, that's what their characteristics are. So like you said, cocoa or nutty
Yeah.
or very fruitful. Well, all that's in that process of distinguishing. That's what you're looking for in the roast. So I know we're talking more in conversation about the roasting itself, but this kind of, there's a lot of people don't understand or aren't knowledgeable or haven't experienced. They just think that coffee comes like the way it is in the scoop, but this is the
Yeah.
process you're going through. Every roaster goes through to serve. You think about from the largest coffee companies to the smallest ones. And someone told me this one time, I think it's a good story. It's like, we talked about my grandfather Folgers and all that stuff. And I thought it was interesting when I first got into coffee roasting was this idea, and this gentleman was sharing with me is like, yes, Folger coffee and other brands like that are not really known for quality. But you think there's a coffee master, someone who's making that coffee
That's true.
in millions of pounds, right?
Yeah.
And they also have to distinguishingly look for a certain taste and profile for those coffees, even
That's
though
true.
they're experiencing millions of pounds. I thought it was just fascinating. Like if you're roasting 1,000,000 pounds or roasting 3 pounds, as a coffee master or someone who takes pride in the work,
Yeah.
is that they're really trying to do the same thing, which is challenging even for companies like Starbucks and Pete's and all the different Black Rifle, all the brands you see on the shelves. All their coffee masters or all their coffee roasters are distinctly looking for characteristics for their brand, those things, and to get it to the customers. So, and that's why you pick up one coffee and you love it, another coffee you don't love it, and so it's all about experiencing, and that's what I love about the whole coffee scene is that it's personal. But as someone who does roasting, I take a lot of pride in trying to make sure that those characters are brought out based on our brand and what we're trying to create for our customers and also our private branding we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next up, let's talk about, well, what do you think about talking about the major coffee players? Do you think you could pinpoint which roast those coffee players on this scale use? Like, would you say, you have
Well,
your
like
big dogs,
like
you
a
have
pizza, a
Pete's.
Pete's
Yeah.
and a Starbucks. They were now. Some have gone, like to go back to where their history was. It was very dark roasted coffees. West Coast was very dark. On the East Coast, maybe I would bridge it this way.
Mm-hmm.
They were really known for somewhere between these two, a very first pop right after the first pop. And then you have, like you were asking, Norwegian coffees, which is kind of a newer roast, that kind of that third wave coffee. Australia, New Zealand, Australia does some fabulous roasting and just some real clarity about their coffee distinct taste. But I could taste the difference going on the venture I took. There's a distinct taste on countries even. It was fascinating when I did that coffee tour, to the 17 countries and
Yes.
4 continents,
And
was that as I was going through it, there was a feature like Guatemala, because if you look at the map of when coffees are produced, there's certain parts and that's where I happened to be at, and it was just funny to watch. I was in the UK and then somewhere else and then somewhere else, and they were still featuring like Guatemala coffee in all those different places because it
yeah,
was the freshest coffee they got probably off the boats, and it was the harvesting and all those things. So, but yes, I would say so. West Coast, East Coast, and then Europe coffee is usually lighter roast. So there's been an evolution for even American coffees. I mean, most college towns I've experienced this, they're more into this lighter roasted coffee. There's less on the darker roast spectrum than there is anywhere else. These three, no. Those are just like production. it would be between these three, which are just like really 15, maybe 15.75 on the curve that you're looking for coffee roast. It really depends on, what you're looking for. But yeah, I would say those are the most popular now. You don't see us so much with the dark roast coffees. I think that's if you were talking about the 20, you're Gen Z, right? Gen Z
Hmm.
typically likes lighter roast coffees.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys. Bye.